The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? Izubee Charles, joined by Matt Shodell, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us on Good Morning CaneSport. It is Monday, September 23rd, and Matt, it is Victory Monday for the Hurricanes once again. 50-15, huge win on the road at Raymond James Stadium as they down the USF Bulls. A lot of talk about, a lot of good. I don't think any bad at all. Matt, just what are your thoughts, on the Hurricanes coming off that big win against the Bulls?
No bad at all, Izubee? Really?
I'm rainbows and sunshine. Somebody's got to keep it, lighthearted on the show.
No, I hear you. Look, I mean, there was. Oh my God, look at me. I'm all like I'd already worked out. I'm all moist. I predicted. A friend of mine texted me. I predicted 48-14. It was 50-15. The end result was what it should have been, but and I kept telling people, USF's not a good team. USF's not a good team. Miami didn't really play, and they'll tell you this themselves. They didn't play up to their standard the first half, which is good. You need to have some moments where you can say, we did not play well, and fix things and keep players honest and keep coaches honest, because USF came into this game knowing they had no chance. They saw Miami play. They saw Kim Ward play. When you see those onside kicks, when you see the Philly special, those are usually teams that are somewhat desperate, and I know Miami ran one last year, but they identify things that they can sort of manipulate in their favor and hope that there's some sort of miraculous outcome. Like USF knew they weren't going to win this game, let's face it. So from the Miami side of things, the good part is Miami didn't play particularly well, especially in the first half. They couldn't run the ball particularly well until the fourth quarter. 121 rushing yards in the fourth quarter. Other than that, they were averaging under 3 yards a carry for the running backs through the first 3 quarters. That's not very good. The Pro Football Focus grades back up that the pass protection was great and the run blocking was bad. You could see it with your own eyes. You don't need the Pro Football Focus somewhat morons, right? Because people don't like Pro Football Focus. But you don't even need them to tell you that. You could see it with your own eyes. So what's so good about this is that even though Miami played not particularly well, struggled to run the ball, they still crushed, a USF team that's not awful. They're not good. Oh my God, I'm still sweating. I got my morning workout already. I woke up very early. So the good news is Miami crushed them anyway. USF literally ran itself ragged. That fast pace of USF in the second half, Miami struggled to adjust to it in the first half. Maybe some of the criticism of the coaches was warranted that they didn't seem prepared, especially on defense, for USF's fast pace. But USF ran itself ragged in the second half, and Miami got stronger in the second half. That's what I love to see the most, that nobody talks about. Everyone wants to talk about, what happened in the first half? Why couldn't they run the ball? Why wasn't Lance Guidry's defense more prepared from the get-go? What you saw in the second half was a superbly better conditioned Miami team against a USF team that literally, this is what they're built on. They're built on running so fast that their offense and defense is supposed to not get tired, and the other team is. What you saw was a USF team that was exhausted and a Miami team that got stronger as the game went on. So why isn't anyone talking about the Miami conditioning? Why isn't anyone talking about the Miami players being better prepared in the second half against a team that was built or supposed to be built to be better at its own home, running its style of offense, where when they run 70 or 80 plays, they're supposed to be better for it, not worse for it, right? So I don't know why people don't talk about that. That's a huge positive for the Miami Hurricanes coming out of a game like this. And, Mario Cristobal said they're not going to face another team like this or not. But it shows you their conditioning level, right? Yeah, were some Miami players going down with cramping? Yes, but of course they were. That happened in the old days too. People get IVs in the locker room at halftime. I talked about that going into this game because this is the kind of game where you need to do that sometimes, right? So, where other people saw negatives, I actually thought it was a very, very positive game in all aspects. You need to struggle sometimes. Even the great Miami teams struggled sometimes against teams that weren't particularly good. BC, that one famous game, and there's every season Miami won championships. There was games where they struggled against inferior opponents. I have zero problems with that happening. It's how you respond to it. And Miami responded superbly. I was super impressed. This is one of those games where a lot of fans are like, oh, we're not that good after all. No, that's not what this means. It's how they responded and now where you go from here. Okay, they demolished a team they should have demolished. No, it wasn't pretty at times, but when you respond the way that Miami did in the second half, like I think that's great. I know fans think I'm so negative all the time. I think that's great. I know fans probably came onto the show this morning, the 4 of you that watched this, thinking, oh, Matt's going to be all doom and gloom because they look so bad in the first half, and and they struggled, and maybe Cam Ward missed some throws he should have made in the first half. Like, no, that happens to everybody, man. It's how you come back from that. And in the past, Miami teams that we've seen crumble in the second half and keep these games close because, oh my God, what happened? They ran a couple of trick plays on us and, oh, we're losing our minds. This is a different animal now. Like, fans should be celebrating that, not going on the message boards being like, we're not that good. Oh, we couldn't crush USF from the beginning and be up by 20 at halftime. Like, no, that's not what this is about. It's never been what college football is about. If you think that, you haven't been paying attention to how different this team responded versus the last 20 years of teams that would just keep USF in the game in the second half when these things happened and things got tough. Now, with that said, if Miami didn't have Cam Ward, if Cam Ward decided to go to the NFL, I'm not sure Miami does do what it did in the second half. Like, the impact of Cam Ward on this team shows you how important one player and one position is to an organization, because Cam Ward just makes everything so much easier, right? You watch that guy, and my son's he's in his final year at Wisconsin, but he loves Miami. He's watching the game, and he's texting me during the game. He loves Cam Ward. He can't get over how great Cam Ward is. The lateral play, right? A coach's worst nightmare is what he did. Going to the ground, just flinging the ball backwards, and if it goes through the running back's hands or off the running back's hands, you don't know what's going to happen, or whoever he's thrown it to on a particular play. Like, not something a coach will ever tell a player to do. But as a fan, you love that. These are guys just having fun, Cam Ward pointing and telling the defense 5 times, we're running the ball right here. This is where we are running the ball on this play on the goal line right now. Good luck trying to stop us. Like, yelling it over and over. And then they just waltz into the end zone standing up. Like, how do you not love something like that? The guy's got the old school swag. It's like he was born to be a Miami Hurricane. I don't know why he was at Incarnate Ward or at Washington State. Like, this guy's always been a Miami Hurricane at heart, It's just the way he plays the game, slowing up on the sideline, like, go ahead and hit me late. I love it, I want to get hit late. Knock me out of the game. Go for it, like stuff like that. I mean, who does that? Miami Hurricane does that. That's who does that. So I absolutely love this game. I love the way it played out. You know what? I'm glad it wasn't a blowout from the start. I'm sick of these blowouts. I know everyone wants a blowout. Of course, if you're a Miami fan, you want to have another boring game. But you need at some point to have this happen and have 8 penalties for 114 yards and have your best cornerback get torched time after time after time. Like, Darryl Porter will learn from this and be better for it. He hasn't faced this kind of adversity. I mean, he was targeted a lot last year and he had a lot of success. Other opponents didn't. His grades haven't been particularly good this year, but he's had fine success in terms of yards given up, completion percentage allowed. And now this is a wake-up call for him. Like, hey, you got to do better, He got torched several times. It's okay to say that. They need to be better. Maybe Lance Guidry learns from this that, hey, maybe we shouldn't put Darryl Porter on an island when we face, Louisville's top receiver via Alabama, who's been lighting things up, things like that. You need to find these things out at some point where it's not going to cost you a game. They learned a lot from this game. They say they came out fairly healthy. I mean, I saw some players that seemed a little banged up. But now it's on to Virginia Tech, and a Virginia Tech team that, by the way, that now has 2 losses, lost to Rutgers. You'll see my story this morning. The schedule is so ridiculously easy for Miami. I went back to 2003 to look at any other time when Miami had only 1 ranked opponent on its regular season schedule. It's only happened twice since 2003. This is one of the easiest schedules in Miami history. And that's great because Miami looks like they have a championship level team in terms of the ACC championship at least. And they only have 1 tough team now, and that's it. So just enjoy the ride, right, fans? And I'm glad Gary's not here interrupting me. Izubee is so patient with me. It's like Izubee with his, one of his older friends that he's just like, whatever this dude says, I'm not even going to pay attention. I'll just nod my head and smile and let the old guy rant on and on and on and on until he finally stops talking, which I'm going to do now.
I'm just soaking up all the knowledge.
Right.
We've been doing Good Morning CaneSport for 3 years now. I don't think I've ever seen you this happy in the morning. It's usually kind of just like, but now it's just you sound like me talking about the Canes now. But hey, they're winning big. They're putting up, I think, 3 games with 50 straight points. It's it's beautiful to see. And kind of want to talk about the Cam Ward thing. One thing that I really liked about him after the game was kind of taking accountability. Obviously, he threw for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. The one thing he was saying is like, hey, I missed some open shots. I missed, guys like Chris Johnson on that, fade where he beat out the defender, was underthrown, and a few other shots under the sideline. And I absolutely loved seeing that from him. And obviously, him pointing, him jogging out of bounds, him just, have it. I feel like he's just messing around, like playing backyard football, like when I was like 9 years old, just throwing the rock around with your friends. He's just so, calm with everything, which is awesome to see. And then he gets to the goal line. He's like, listen, guys, I'm running right here. You can't stop it. And then he's chirping to the guys after. I think it's absolutely amazing. And the one thing that really stood out to me, too, about his game was, after that, Jacoby George interception, that was not his fault at all. He comes back on the next drive, leads them down the field 90 yards, 5 for 5, connects with Isaiah Horton 3 separate times. Like, he didn't flinch whatsoever. And the defense either, like you said, they're running the onside kicks, they're running the USF Philly special, whatever they call it. And then Coach Guidry sees that, changes something, because that second half, the offense looked absolutely awful. And, USF has one of the best rushing attacks, in the country through 4 games. And, they pretty much shut that down. Byron Bowen, I think, ran for less than 30 yards. He's been killing everybody on the ground this year. So I absolutely love seeing, those adjustments. And, like you mentioned too, the penalties, midway through the game, I was writing the takeaways like, these penalties have to stop. And then I guess Mario and those guys heard me in the locker room and kind of cut it out. But that was awesome. See, I just love seeing all these little adjustments because, that hurry up offense, I knew they were fast. So I was like, all right, these guys are, getting the ball off quicker than the Miami defensive linemen, get their hands in the ground, get a solid pass rush. And I was kind of getting like flashbacks like UNC. I'm like, oh my gosh, not this again. I got to, kill him in a hurry up. But Coach Guidry, made some adjustments or whatever he did, kind of slowed it down. Obviously, Byron Brown going out injured, didn't help USF at all. But I absolutely love what I've seen, defense, offense, and obviously rushing game. I feel like that is kind of the only area where I'm kind of like, all right, let's kind of get this up a little bit. But I do think in conference play, you'll kind of see them get a little more bang bang. I feel like having a guy like Jalen Rivers out kind of plays in that as well too. But a lot of good from this game. If you're kind of taking negative away from this, I don't know, what else to tell you or what else you have to see from this team. Only thing I do want to see from this team is kind of, can they keep this momentum up in ACC play? Obviously, USF isn't a Power 5 team. They're a Group 5 team. Florida isn't having the best season, but I want to kind of see, hey, when the Virginia Techs come around, I know they're not having the best year, but, still formidable opponent in Louisville and all those guys down the road. Matt, you kind of talked about this a little bit. The schedule is kind of weak. Do you think that's negative at all when it comes to this team? Obviously, they're blowing everyone out how they should be, but kind of when a team really punches them in the face maybe later on in the season, do you think having that weak schedule is going to come back and bite them?
Well, I will get to that, but in my best, treating like Gary Furman type situation here, I'm going to change the subject for a second because, I wish Gary was on the show this morning because I know that he loves Sam Brown, and Sam Brown had an amazing play, but he also felt like Sam Brown deserved reps over Isaiah Horton, which I had been arguing against. But now I'm starting to think maybe Sam Brown and Isaiah Horton should both be playing ahead of Jacoby George. Like, I don't even know anymore what I think I know. I mean, I had, look, Sam Brown had one great play. He didn't do much besides that, okay? And one play is, let's face it, it's one play, I mean, he's faster than the DBs on USF. I'm not sure that says a lot, but he did have a fantastic touchdown. But Jacoby George just seems to you don't know from play to play which Jacoby George you're going to get. He has so much talent and so much potential, but he just seems to lose his head. And sometimes in the worst moments, and you just worry against the Louisville when one play might be the difference. Like if he does that against Louisville or does something dumb against Louisville, that's the kind of game where you're like, oh, we had it all right there and it slipped away. And sometimes you just see, like, look, I'm a coach, okay? Not of tremendous student athletes, but of children. Okay, I've coached high school teams, high school age players, through much younger players. And what I can tell you, just no matter how old these guys are that I've coached, and this is again not college, but up through high school age, seniors in high school I've coached, juniors in high school. One thing stands true: when you see a player who, throughout his career, and you sometimes follow these kids when they're younger coming up, just like these coaches do, right? They follow them as recruits, and you see them just sort of have hiccups and mental busts in these big moments where they think this is my moment to shine. This is when I'm going to be great. And, I deserve all the accolades and I should be the guy in the biggest game making the biggest plays. And they don't, and they make a mistake in those moments. Not always, but enough that you have some concerns that, hey, the consistency is not there. Like Jacoby George throughout his Miami career has shown the consistency is just, I'm sorry, it's not there. And, I know fans are going to hate me for it. I just speak my truth, and that's what I believe I have seen through Jacoby George's career. He makes mental mistakes. He makes, he does some silly things. And in this particular case, maybe it wasn't the biggest moment in the biggest game, but, he was trying to make a big play instead of following what he's been taught, right? Which is secure the ball, catch the ball secured, and then try to run, right? Which he did in the wrong set. It's just like he was trying to secure the ball and then forgot to try to secure the ball and started running, before he really had it secured. And sometimes when you're running over the middle, you think you hear footsteps or whatever the case may be. You get excited. It's early in the game, whatever the case may be. I don't know exactly what's going through his head, but that's when you see a receiver do that, usually it's because they're worried about taking a big hit, or they're trying to make a play before they can make the play, right? They're trying to get that extra half step ahead of a defender just to be gone instead of just taking the 10, 15, 20-yard pickup. Whatever the case may be. I'm not sure right now with the Jacoby George we knew from the past few years to what we saw with that big mistake and just not making plays after that at all. It just seemed his head was gone at that point, right? He didn't do anything after that, a couple of little catches here and there. And with Isaiah Horton just playing so big. And Sam Brown, I think, is, consistent. He hasn't been consistently good, but he also hasn't been making anything like that awful to me. He hasn't done much, but he's not making dumb mistakes, really. I just don't know where you go with that right now if you're Miami, because you have the ACC schedule coming up. These games, you cannot have hiccups. Virginia Tech's not particularly good, okay? But they're middle-of-the-road ACC team. They're 2-2. They just lost to Rutgers. They're not good. They should lose by 30-plus to Miami. But you want your best players making the best plays, and if it winds up being a close game and one of those games that just sometimes come down to a play here or there, which happens sometimes, even against teams you're better than, you need to have your most consistent, top-performing players out there. Right now, I think it's Isaiah Horton and Sam Brown. That's what I wanted to ask you before we get into the schedule. Do you agree with that? Do you think I'm nuts to say Jacoby George right now might be the fourth best receiver on Miami's team? I don't know.
Yeah, I literally had the statistics pulled up before we started recording this morning. Jacoby George is actually, the fourth most productive wide receiver. I think, Sam Brown has 14 catches for 173 yards. Jacoby George has 12 for 172. Isaiah Horton, 19 for 278. And Restrepo with 20 for 362 and 5 touchdowns lead the team. I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but when we did call our predictions during the summer and everybody was saying, hey, who's going to be wide receiver 3? I said it's Isaiah Horton. For some reason, it just clicked in my head. Obviously, I kind of went with that because every other Cam Ward interview, he's like, man, Isaiah Horton. I was like, you're not going to speak so highly of this guy.
But your number 2 was Jacoby George, so don't be tooting your own horn, Izubee.
That's what I'm saying. I said I'm not going to toot my horn too much.
Don't.
But the conversation was wide receiver 3, and I said Isaiah Horton is going to be the breakout guy this year. And he's looking like, obviously, that's not a good problem to have. You don't want that problem at all. But, hey, a guy like that stepping up, I wrote this in, one of the takeaways Saturday. He could have kind of folded and, said, oh, man, they brought in Sam Brown to take all my reps, man. I'm just going to throw in the towel and give it up. I feel like he's really, really embraced this challenge. And, he looks amazing, like you said, kind of the number 2 wide receiver behind Xavier Restrepo, who's Mr. Reliable, who shows up I feel like he's been showing up since he came out of his mother's womb. He's just, that guy for the Hurricanes. But I'm really, really excited to see Isaiah Horton continue this. And I do want to see Jacoby George kind of be a little bit more consistent. I feel like he's done better than, last year with the stupid, penalties and things like that. And just the little things like that you kind of want to see cleaned up. But I'm not mad with these wide receivers at all this year. I feel like they've done a great job. And having a guy like Cam Ward throwing you the rock, I feel like I can go for 100, in some of these games. Might have to ask Mario if I can get a year of eligibility in this offense with Cam Ward. But, we're really excited to see, what those wide receivers do.
Are you running for president? Who are the 3 starting receivers, Izubee?
The 3 starting receivers, in my opinion, are Restrepo, Jacoby George, and Isaiah Horton. I think.
Okay. So you're taking out Sam Brown. You're sticking with Jacoby. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
I'm sticking with Jacoby 100%.
Listen. I do not fault that at all. Jacoby almost had a 1,000-yard season. We're only 4 games in. He's had 1 mistake. He had a bunch of mistakes last year. I totally get it. That's why I think fans. I'm curious to see if they think you're right as usual or if I'm wrong as usual. It's. I'm assuming I'm wrong. Okay. So on to the schedule portion. Your question for me, since we had this long tangent, which is. That's my fault, as always. I do like the idea, if you want to win a national championship, of being tested before you play the Georgias and whoever else is, Texas is whatever you want to name them, of the world. I don't like the idea of your team getting used to low levels of competition and then all of a sudden just being hit in the mouth with, oh, wow, this team's just as good as we are, or, oh, wow, this team's better than we are in these specific positions. And, oh, we haven't seen a cornerback like this. Oh, we haven't seen a receiver like this. I really love the idea of playing tough competition and playing really, really good teams, not just as a fan, because it's a lot more fun to see good games instead of blowouts for 11 out of 12 weeks, but because it prepares you. You know, Miami, their saying is iron sharpens iron. And right now, what's a soft metal? Okay. Gold, believe it or not, is a soft metal. So right now it's gold sharpens iron because they're playing just soft teams and soft opponents. You know, I usually do, well, Izubee or myself do a position by position who has the edge leading up to the games. But that's when they're playing decent teams, because what's the point of saying Miami has the edge at every single position? It's just obvious, right? There's nothing to talk about. We haven't done one since Florida, and we're not doing one for Virginia Tech because Miami has the edge at every single position across the board. You know, maybe DB would be even, okay? But like, it's ridiculous. Like, they're playing teams where the other team doesn't even have an edge at a single position. And that's not going to, you know, Louisville will probably be the next one we do. I don't think Cal's particularly good, right? I mean, Cal lost to FSU. I mean, yeah, and I know Cal was hanging its hat on Auburn. Auburn lost at home by 10 to Arkansas. Like, there's no good ACC teams left. That's my column this morning. There's Syracuse lost, right? Like, there's no good opponent where Miami can hang its hat at the end of the season. Thank God it's not the old system, right, where it's just based on what people think out there, and it's just, you know, there's 12 playoff teams. They can prove themselves in the playoffs, right? They lose one game, and they'll be in the playoffs. But there's just no other team they play besides Louisville at this point that's any good. And, yeah, you're right. You know, maybe they'll play – so here's the thing. Maybe they'll play Clemson in the ACC title game. I think Clemson got killed by Georgia. We know this, okay? But Clemson still has, I think it's Clemson and Miami, the two best teams in the ACC, with Louisville number 3. That's my personal opinion. If you ask me who's better, Clemson or Miami right now, I think Clemson's still the standard bearer. I'm not ready to say Miami's the best team in the ACC yet, because you know what? You have to earn it. Yeah. You have to show it. And 4 games against 4 crappy teams doesn't mean Matt Shodell is going to be like, oh my God, Miami's now the best team in the ACC. You got to earn it and prove it. And you know how you do that? You beat Clemson in the ACC title game. That's how you earn it and prove it. And until then, I'm going to keep saying Clemson's better than Miami. Because you know what? Miami, that way they can hang that in their locker room and say, Matt Shodell still thinks we suck. They don't care about what I think. But no, that's how I view things, okay? And the other interesting part here is Miami might have a better chance at the playoffs, as crazy as it sounds, if it loses to Louisville. Because if you lose to Louisville, and Louisville and Clemson right now appear to probably be most likely headed to the ACC title game. You know, I know it's early, but they seem like the two best teams in the ACC. If those two teams wind up in the ACC championship game, and Miami with 1 loss isn't, right? And Miami finishes regular season 11-1, Miami's in the playoffs at 11-1. There's no way they're leaving an 11-1 Miami team out of the playoffs if they lost to one of the ACC, you know, title game teams. But if Miami beats Louisville, and let's say, you know, loses to Clemson in the ACC title game, like, they're not taking 3 ACC teams, I don't think. So at that point, Miami's now lost the most recent game. You got Louisville, hypothetically, with 1 loss to Miami, but Miami just lost to Clemson. You know, what do they do there? You know, they might screw Miami because they hate Miami, these people. So I don't know if it's better to go to the ACC title game and lose to Clemson. Obviously, you want to go and win the ACC title game, then you automatically have a bye. But if you go there and you lose, you got a problem if you're Miami. Because you haven't beaten anybody, right? Except Louisville, who wound up not in the ACC title game now. You have no resume. Louisville is playing Notre Dame. They could beat, hypothetically, Notre Dame, right? They could have some other quality wins. I don't know what happens. So, you know, it's only 4 games in. I'm just doing hypotheticals. But, like, if you're a Miami fan and we lose to Louisville, it's not the end of the world for the playoffs at all, okay? And if you beat Louisville, then you still got to probably win that ACC title game against probably a pretty good Clemson team. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting for 2 games out of the entire year. Other than that, to me, it's like, I think Georgia Tech, my personal opinion, I know Georgia Tech's lost 2 games. I still think matchup-wise, they pose the most problems for Miami. a decent enough passing quarterback who can also run a pretty good running game that can cause some problems with their schemes, and an average defense. That's the best Miami's going to face other than Louisville all year. Like, that's pathetic, but that's the truth in my opinion. Like, I don't think Syracuse is good. I don't think Cal's good. I think, FSU's terrible. I think Georgia Tech, as crazy as it sounds, is the next best team after Louisville, and there's a huge drop-off from the Cardinals to the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, I think that's still my biggest concern. I feel like until they get tested, until they get kind of punched in the mouth, then we'll really, really know what this team is made of. But, the USF thing, like I said, they went down for the first time this year. They responded really well, but, that's USF. I want to see them, go down or score something on the road at Louisville and kind of fight back. But the only time will tell, like you mentioned, it's only week 4, and a lot of things can happen in this college football season. So, going to be excited. Virginia Tech's on deck. Matt, before we move into, our favorite part, recruiting, the best part about CaneSport, any parting thoughts, heading into Virginia Tech and, with us talking to the coaches later this morning?
I mean, Kyron Drones was pretty bad this past weekend. He's the only guy you worry about if you're Miami. And the guy couldn't throw the ball, ran for 60 yards, which for him isn't even very good. They have a good running back. But this is very much, to me, a USF type team. They sort of, if you stop their run, they're not really going to hurt you. Their defense is very, very average. I think they're in the 60s or 70s nationally in pretty much every category that matters. They're just not a real good team. It's sort of like what Miami's been dealing with for all these years, right? Because Virginia Tech, I think there was 7 or 8 years in a row where they won 10-plus games with Frank Beamer. And since then, they've had one 10-win season. This is like when Miami fans watch this game Friday night, if you go to the game or watch on TV, whatever the case may be, when you watch it, that's Miami. That's the Miami we have hated watching for the last 20 years. That's Virginia Tech. When you watch that team, that used to be a really, really top program that was competing in very high-level bowl games at a very high level, right? 10, 11 wins a year for 8 years in a row, I think it was. And then, they hit the Miami slide. I mean, that's what happened. And so enjoy this game on Friday night, because when Miami crushes Virginia Tech, that could have been reversed, right? Because Virginia Tech had every argument in its arsenal too. They went from the Big East to the ACC, just like Miami did, right? They had the same success and then struggles that Miami's had. And Miami's dug itself out, it appears, this year. And Virginia Tech is still wallowing in the Miami misery. It's still 95 degrees and humid in Virginia Tech land, and they have no air conditioning. It's just miserable. And we have air conditioning in Miami, and we're loving it. So yeah, I think that's going to be a fun game to watch from that perspective, because it used to be a really good team, and their fans know what we have felt, what Miami fans have felt for so many years, and they're still in it. They're still in that horrible, here we go again, another shitty team. Can I say that? Another bad team. Sorry, boys and girls. Mr. Rogers made a mistake. Okay. So I'm going to like seeing that.
Yeah, I was excited. I thought, before the season, I thought Virginia Tech was going to be much, much, much better than they were. I think they returned like 86% of their productivity from last year. And I'm like, all right, these guys are bringing back everyone, but I guess they brought back everyone that stunk up the room last year, and they're doing the same thing this year. They got losses to Vanderbilt, who got blown out by Georgia State, which is the craziest thing to me. And then, like you mentioned, the Rutgers lost this past weekend. So I was very excited to see this game. I'm so excited. Obviously, always a good time to be in Hard Rock watching the Canes play. But the other thing, too, Kyron Drones and Cam Ward, I'm pretty sure they're cousins. Their QB coach told me that. So that's kind of a cool storyline, a neat storyline to watch during this game. And they train with the same quarterback coach and are really familiar with each other. So that's one cool storyline to have heading into this game. But we'll have you covered all week leading up to it with Virginia Tech's preview. So stay tuned with that. Jumping into recruiting, the game was on the road at USF this past weekend, but there were a few Canes commits and targets in the crowd, one being Gavin Nix, who still has Michigan pushing for a visit and all this good stuff. But he's saying, hey, these reporters are just making up stories, and I'm locking with the Canes. So we'll see how truthful he's in that. But I do, have faith in Gavin Nix. He said once he committed, he wanted to shut things down and lock down with the Canes. So he talks about that. So make sure to check out that story. Also an update on a pair of 2026 guys, starting with Johnny Jones. He was also at that USF game. Had a lot of great things to say about them. And Clinton Portis, his son Camden Portis, talks about that as well. Have a ton of more recruiting on the site as well, and a lot of more team news coming later this morning as we speak with Mario Cristobal, Lance Gator, and Shannon Dawson. Matt, before I close out the show this morning, any parting words? What do you want to say to the Canes that woke up with us and bear through this, episode of the Morning CaneSport?
Yeah, I want to say thank God Izubee Charles is hosting this show. I have never been happier. Do you notice people out there in YouTube verse, if you still even bother watching me, how happy I was this morning? Look at me. I'm chipper. And then look at it. I don't know what this. I'm trying to smile. This is my smile. I'm smiling. You know, you never see me do that. It's because of this guy. It's Izubee Charles Day. Happy Izubee Charles Day.
Happy Izubee Charles Day. On that note, for Matt Shodell, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you all for starting your morning with us, and have a great rest of your day.